Hey, what's up? So today we'll be talking about the contenders for the 2019-2020 season. So here we can see the teams that finished in the top eight, aka made the playoffs last year in the East, and we're gonna talk about the teams that are gonna make the playoffs this year. So last year we had the Bucks at number one because they had the MVP in Giannis. They had really good pieces in Middleton. And Lopez and Bledsoe and Brogdon, who had a 50-40-90 season. They were stacked. They had Muradic. They had a lot of good pieces, right? And they played pretty well in the playoffs. Obviously lost to Raptors, who were number two last year because they had Kawhi, they had Gasol, they had Siakam, they had Lowry. They had a pretty good bench. And you had the Sixers, who were absolutely stacked in terms of starters, but their bench was terrible, especially they didn't really have the depth. Especially at the five. So whenever time Embiid came off the floor, they had nobody to play like 10-15 minutes while he was out. You had the Celtics, who were absolutely stacked in terms of talent, but weren't really a contender last year. So really the only contenders last year were the Bucks, Raptors, and Sixers in the East. Because the Celtics just didn't click chemistry-wise. I think, as we all know, Kyrie and all his theories and conspiracies last year didn't really mesh with the younger players on the team, like Tatum and Brown, and Hayward just didn't play well at all. He's not worth the contract right now, so we'll see if he bounces back this year. But last year he just wasn't good. Then you had the Pacers, who had injuries to what's his face? I forgot his name. What's his name? Oh, bro, he's not even on the depth chart, man. Oh, he's fourth. He's fourth? What kind of garbage is this? I guess he was injured, but Oladipo, man. I forgot his name. Oladipo, man. He was a beast 2 years ago, right? He was just... He helped the Raptors... Sorry. He helped the Pacers take the Cavs to 7 games when LeBron was still there. Like, he averaged 23 points per game 2 years ago, right? And then last year he was injured. But the Pacers still finished pretty well, right? If you go back to the standings, right, they finished, I believe, fifth, right? They were only 3 games out of the third seed, and they were competitive until the end of the season when their schedule got really tough and they couldn't win games. And you got the Nets, who, they won 1 game in the playoffs. They were nice. They had D'Lo. They had, what's his name? They had Karis LeVert, who actually I think is going to be really good this year. They had, look at those pieces real quick. They had that shooter, Joe Harris. He could shoot, except in the playoffs he shot terribly. They had Jared Allen at center, who was pretty good. They had this guy I can't pronounce, Rodion Kurucs, who played absolutely awful in the playoffs. I don't really think he's that good of a piece. He's a decent role player, but he didn't play that well. And obviously next year, we'll talk about next year later, but next year you can see they have a lot of new pieces. We'll talk about those pieces in a second. But it's going to be a completely different team, no more D'Lo. So we'll talk about that later. But let's go back one. Let's just go back to... Oh. Alright, that's ridiculous. Come on, bruh. Too fast. Alright. So where were we? So yeah, the Nets. Then we had the Magic. We honestly are still trash. They're probably gonna be trash next year. I don't really see. They might make the playoffs because the East is so weak in the bottom. But I mean, look at their roster, man. Aaron Gordon, who's pretty good. Vucevic, who was a starter in the. Sorry, not starter. He was an all-star player last year, but he just doesn't play well in the playoffs because he got abused, right? He got abused by Gasol, who's like 30-something, like 36, 37. So an older Gasol abused Vucevic, but then again, an older Gasol played pretty well against Embiid. But my point is, Vucevic is just not a playoff performer. He just doesn't have the defensive skills that a center needs to be playable in the playoffs. So I really, sorry Magic fans, but I just don't see the Magic being that good next year. I mean, they have Jonathan Isaac, who's like a combo forward. He could either be a small forward or power forward, right? He's playing the small forward right now because right now Isaac is playing at the 4, but he was last year. Like he could block some shots. He's athletic, right? He's just a very raw player. I think he reminds me a little bit in terms of like a skinnier Aaron Gordon, but better defender, because Aaron Gordon is nowhere near as good defensively as Isaac is going to be. But Gordon really took he didn't take the next step last year. Like he had a good season 2 years ago, right? He finally put up 17 points, and then he just kind of really had a similar season where he didn't really take that next step. But he's a nice player. He's just not like an all-star type player. Let's go back one. All right, so I spent too much time on the Magic, but the Magic just I don't really see not much of them. They're not a contender this year, or they weren't a contender last year either. I mean, they won one game against the Raptors, and then they lost every other game. So let's go back to the depth chart here. The standings, right? So I'm having a lot of trouble here. Just going back, it's really annoying. I'm just gonna make it not full screen, but like big enough so you guys can see the standings. So last but not least, were the Pistons last year at exactly 500. Let's see what pieces they added. Actually, let's see what they had last year. Last year, who they have? Bro, I don't care about Christian Wood. That's the name that's still around, huh? Alright, you know what? Screw the Pistons. They're not even worth talking about. Alright. What they had? They had Blake Griffin. They had, what's his name? That center. I don't forgot his name, really. Center that was basically Embiid's son, Andre Drummond. Yeah, that Kennard can shoot. Reggie Jackson's They don't really have the pieces right there to really be a contender. So let's not even talk about them anymore. All right, let's go back to the standings. Okay, so wow, this is so slow. ESPN is being really slow right now. This is really annoying. All right, so now let's talk about next year. So the Bucks will still be good. Okay, they lost Brogdon, who's like I said had a 50, 40, 90 season, which is pretty rare. 50% from the field, 40% from three, and 90% from a free throw line. So he had those numbers or better. So they lost a pretty big piece there. But I thought re-signing Lopez was huge because I think he's underrated. I think he's really good fit-wise for the Bucks because Giannis needs people who can space the floor, and five who can space the floor like Lopez and also provide rim protecting like Lopez can is just so invaluable to the Bucks. The Raptors, are they even a contender next year? That's the real question. They lost their biggest piece, as we know, Kawhi Leonard. He's going to the Clippers, and I really don't see much there. I don't think Siakam is a number one piece. Lowry is on decline. Gasol is on a decline. It's just they don't have the pieces to contend next year. I mean, they'll probably be like a 6th to 8th seed. They'll make the playoffs, but they're not going to be a contender. So far, just comparing last year to this year, we have one contender, still a contender in the Bucks. The Raptors are no longer a contender. The Sixers will still be a contender next year because let's look at their new roster, right? Let's just look at this, and we can see that they lost Jimmy Butler. It's a huge loss. They lost JJ Redick, again a huge loss, but not as big as Jimmy Butler, but still a huge loss. But then they added Al Horford. They re-signed Tobias Harris. They added Josh Richardson. So they still have the pieces to contend, in my opinion. I still think they're going to contend. I think Zaire Smith is going to be a nice young player. Last year he had issues health-wise with a allergy attack. Almost died, actually. But this year he'll finally get some playing time. I think he'll be good. Matthias, their rookie, he might put up some minutes. Bolden was very inconsistent last year. Some games he went off from three. A lot of games he just couldn't shoot. And defensively, he was always lost rotations. Mike Scott was a big re-sign. Kyle Quinn, I don't really see that as a good addition. I think as a vet minimum, maybe he's worth it. But he's not going to be a playoff caliber backup center, I believe. James Ennis is a nice player. You got good pieces to contend. I think they have a good chance to make the finals. So they're a contender. So far we have the Bucks and the Sixers as contenders, and the Celtics, who people think are a contender, and I think that's absolutely ludicrous because they lost Kyrie, replaced him with Kemba. People are saying, oh well, Kyrie was a better player than Kemba, but doesn't come with the personality and chemistry issues that Kemba. Sorry, Kemba doesn't come with the personality and chemistry issues that Kyrie does. So even though he's a worse player, slightly drop off. People think that it actually is an addition by subtraction by swapping Kemba with Kyrie. Now, I just don't agree with that because Kyrie, in my opinion, is clutch in the playoffs. Now, last year he wasn't, but overall, usually he's pretty clutch in the playoffs. And Kemba has only made the playoffs, I think, once, and we have to. He's not proven yet, right? I just can't say for certain he's gonna be better than Kyrie, even without the chemistry issues, which might actually arise. I mean, Kemba's a nice guy, doesn't seem as crazy as Kyrie, definitely not. He seems like a normal dude, but you never know. Hayward is still. I just don't know if he's gonna come back from the injury. I really don't. I mean, that was a gruesome injury, and he just didn't have a good season last year. I mean, number wise, like his field goal percentage wasn't bad, right? 46%, right? It doesn't look that bad, but they needed him to space the floor. He just wasn't a good shooter from three last year, and he just was so inconsistent last year. Like some games he went off, and most games he just wasn't visible on the floor. And defensively, he just wasn't the same. Like he was at least an above average defender in Utah, but since he joined the Celtics, he hasn't been a good defender. So I just don't see that. Tatum's going to be nice, obviously, and so is Jaylen Brown. So they got pieces. They got Marcus Smart. They got pieces, right? But they don't have a center. They don't have a center. And Enes Kanter, whatever, he's just not a good starter. Like he's not starter material. He's gonna get played out of the playoffs. He can't play defense. He can get rebounds. He can score, but he just can't play defense in the playoffs, man. Like he's just not gonna be playable in the playoffs. Against Embiid, like it's just no match. There's no match. So I just don't see him being they're not going to beat the Bucks or Sixers. So I don't see him as a contender. Now the Pacers to me are a dark horse team because you're getting back Oladipo, right? And you got some pieces. You just signed Brogdon. So let's just wait till this pulls up. It's ridiculous. All right, so you got Brogdon now. That's a really nice piece. He's more like a shooting guard. I don't know why they're putting a point guard here, but I guess they're going to really play him. Yeah, so you got Oladipo and Brogdon. So Oladipo will probably be the playmaker out of the backcourt. Then you got TJ Warren. I forgot they got him. That's a nice piece. He doesn't really play defense, but he can definitely score. So they got three scorers in Brogdon and Oladipo and Warren. And Brogdon's a shooter too. And Warren actually shot pretty decently last year. He really wasn't known as a shooter until last year. And he's kind of starting to become a better shooter. And you got Sabonis, who I'm not really a fan of. And you got Miles Turner, who I am a fan of. So overall, I think their team is a dark horse contender because I really think they can make some noise. I think people forgot about him last year before the injury for Oladipo. I think that if they make the finals, I'll not be shocked. So I really think they're a dark horse. So to me, the contenders so far are the Bucks, Sixers, and Pacers. To me, the Raptors not a contender because they lost Kawhi, and the Celtics not a contender because they don't have a center who can match Embiid, and they just don't have I just don't think that you can say that Kemba is a better player than Kyrie right now in terms of fit or skill because he's not proven in the playoffs. So far, like I said, we got the Bucks, we got the Sixers, and we got the Pacers, and then finally we got the Nets. A lot of people were saying, oh yeah, they got Kyrie now, they got KD, they got an old DeAndre Jordan, right? But they're not contenders next year just because Durant's going to be out the whole. He's going to be out the whole year. Kyrie's he's not number one option on a team. Like if Durant was healthy, I think they're a contender. But if he's the number one option on your team, they're not going to contend. Absolutely not. And DeAndre Jordan he's friends with Kyrie and Durant, and that's why he got paid, and that's why he's on the Nets. But honestly, Jarrett Allen's a nice piece, man. I don't know why. Like, if you're really gonna start DeAndre Jordan over Jarrett Allen, that's kind of dumb to me. I think Jarrett Allen he can't keep up with Embiid. Like, he's not big enough. But against any other center, I think like any other like center who's not like over 7 feet tall, he can play he can be like a small ball center. He can block shots. He's a pretty good player, man. If you look at his stats. And look at the eye test. Like, he can get blocks, and he just always gets boards too. Like he's a beast. I think you just can't bang low with like Embiid or Gasol, which is why even if Durant and Kyrie were both healthy, they still would be like an outside like chance of getting in. I don't think they like even with a healthy Durant and a healthy Kyrie, like they're not gonna beat the Sixers in 7 or the Bucks. I just don't see it. But they can probably take them to 7. I think, and there's a miracle they might win, but that's my personal opinion. So they would still be a contender if Durant was healthy, but not like one of the top contenders. It'd be like a second tier contenders. And then everybody else really is not really a contender. The Magic, no. The Pistons, no. The Hornets, hell no. The Heat, now they got Butler, but they lost Richardson. Like they're gonna be a playoff team now because they got Butler, but they're not gonna be a contender. The Wizards, I'm not even sure if John Wall's gonna be healthy next year, so no. The Hawks, no. The Bulls, no. The Cavs, no, and the Knicks, no. So really, none of these teams are really contenders next year. The worst team in the East is probably going to be the Hornets because they lost Kemba and they just have a really shitty team. Now let's go back to the West now. So we just did the East, now let's do the West. So last year the Warriors, obviously they had KD and they had all the pieces there, but this year they lost KD. They swapped him out with D'Lo, and Klay Thompson's going to be out probably until the playoffs. So the Warriors, in my opinion, are still a contender because Klay should be healthy by the playoffs. D'Lo is going to be a nice player. Obviously, huge downgrade from KD, but still a good player. Like he was an All-Star last year, although he was a substitute at the end. But he's a pretty good guard. So I think the Warriors are still going to be a contender for sure. People forget that before KD went there, that Steph, Draymond, Klay just balled out. They won 72 games, and they won a championship before KD was there. So also, you could argue that their depth back then was insane. So even though they had those 3 players, their depth and their role players were so good, and they don't have that anymore. Well, that is true. So the role players aren't as good as they were before KD was there, but I still think that they're going to be contender this year without KD. The Nuggets, I just don't see it, man. I mean, yeah, they won a lot of games last year, especially in the first half of the season before the All-Star break. They were absolutely, really, really, like, they're just a good basketball team. But, I mean, look at their pieces, man. Like, they got Jokic, who's like a beast, probably a top 10 player. Millsap, who took a pretty big nosedive last year in terms of talent and skill, and he just kind of just wasn't the same last year. Barton, Harris, and Murray are they're really good scorers, man. But like, I just don't see it, man. Like they're a fake contender. They're one of those teams that, on paper, they look really good, but they just like Jokic, as good as he is offensively, especially like his playmaking and scoring, it's just you need a defensive center in the playoffs. Like for example, if the Nuggets won against the Sixers, or they won against who else is like a dominant center? Like if they won against the Lakers with AD, right? They just get run off the floor, man. Just Jokic, as good as he is offensively, just in the playoffs he's gonna dominate offensively, but he'll probably give up more points than he scores. So I just don't see it. And Murray and Harris, they're streaky, man. They're so good. And Malik Beasley is also really good, man. They got some really nice guards and forwards, and they got Jeremy Grant as a free agent addition, and Michael Porter might be healthy. So I might be wrong. I think Jokic was definitely a lot better defensively last year. So he's at least passable now. So if he takes that next step defensively, which he might, I don't know, he might. But and Millsap bounces back, they're still a dark horse. So even though I consider him a fake contender, I guess you consider him a dark horse contender because they got some pieces. And Torrey Craig's also a nice piece. Man, actually looking at these Nuggets players, man, they have really good role players and really good almost all-stars. Like Jamal Murray might be an all-star next year. Gary Harris is a really, really, really nice player, but not an all-star. Will Barton, same thing. Malik Beasley, man, he's a beast. Like, thinking about it, actually, again, I don't know. I mean, I feel like they got shooters, man. They got shooters, and then they got a really good all-around player, except for defense. So really, I guess, a really good offensive center in Jokic. And they even got Bol Bol. Wow. who, in my opinion, is overrated because he doesn't play defense. So, but he's worth the flyer on. You got him in the second round, right? He might end up, maybe getting better on defense. You never know. But look at Beasley, man. He's also pretty good. 47 and 40. He's and also really good defense. Just really good depth and really good also starter quality in every position, really. Even though Millsap took a step back. So I don't know. I guess you can consider a dark horse. But let's move on to the Blazers, who made it to the Western Conference Finals last year. But I mean, there's so many better teams this year. You got the Clippers and Lakers to talk about later, but I don't know if they can make it to the Western Conference Finals this year. They were missing Nurkic last year, and they got Whiteside, so they basically realized that, as I said before, that Kanter is not a good player in the playoffs. And when Nurkic went down with the ACL, Kanter, I mean, he's tough. He played with that injury, but he just wasn't good, man. No injury, he's not good. So, he'll just get eaten alive on pick and rolls on defense. While Whiteside, I don't know if he's the answer either, though, because Whiteside, once he got paid, doesn't care anymore. He's just not going to care. And then you got a good role player in Tolliver as a backup. Zach Collins he had a decent sophomore season, right? I think he was a sophomore last year. Yeah, he had some games where he took off, but still inconsistent. I just don't see it. Rodney Hood, he played a lot better than he did with LeBron. He kind of had a bounce back here. Obviously, you got Dame and CJ, or your stars. I mean, are they a contender? Yes, if they're healthy, but there's some questionable fits. Do you really think Whiteside is going to be happy on the bench once Nurkic comes back? And do you think Whiteside's going to play his heart out because he hasn't really been playing well since he got that contract? So, I mean, they got some decent bench pieces, and they got really good, really good players in Dame and CJ, but I just don't see it. So I'm actually going to say no. They're not a contender next year. Also, they weren't a contender this year either. I mean, they got swept by the Warriors without KD. So I just don't see them contenders. The Rockets is an interesting one. So the West is just stacked, man. I mean, they just lost CP3, but I mean they got an upgrade because CP3 was always injured. He was declining pretty hard, man. He hasn't really been good in a year and a half. And they got Russell Westbrook, who was a former MVP, but that fit is questionable. Number one, Harden and Westbrook both need the ball. Number two, so does Eric Gordon. And number three, the spacing is not going to be good, right? Harden can shoot, but really he doesn't really shoot off the catch and shoot much often. He's more like a dribble and shoot guy. Gordon, same thing. And same thing with Westbrook, although Westbrook is not really a good shooter at all, man. If you look at his stats last year, from the three-point line, he shot 29%, and he took 5 threes, man. That's a lot of threes. 5.6 threes per game. He only shot 29%. That's below average. And the league average is 36%. So, and also, that contract, is better than CP3's, but it's still not a great contract because he kind of declined last year in terms of shooting, and he relies on his athleticism. And I don't know if he's going to make it past 33 in terms of his prime. So he's kind of he's still in his prime. But for how long? Now, we're talking about next year, though. And I still think it's better than the CP3 Harden duo because CP3 was never healthy. At least Westbrook most likely will be healthy, and he'll play his heart out. So, and you still got PJ Tucker, who's locked down on defense, and Capella, who is a pretty good center. And they got Eric Gordon, they got Green, they got Rivers, who actually is underrated as a role player. They got some pieces, so they are a contender just because James Harden is still there, and they got decent role players, and also they got Westbrook, who is a former MVP. Just the fit is questionable, but yeah, overall they are a contender. So far we have 2 contenders in the Warriors and Rockets, and a dark horse contender in the Nuggets. So really 3 contenders next year. Then you got the Jazz, and the Jazz. Wow, in terms of the changes they made, that's all I gotta say, because they really made some really good changes this year. So last year they had Rubio. I almost said Marco Rubio. They had Ricky Rubio at point guard, who's okay. But now they got Mike Conley, who's definitely a huge upgrade. They still got Mitchell, obviously, who's their lead player. They got Gobert as center. They still got Ingles, who had a down year shooting, but still can shoot. Royce O'Neal's a really good role player. They got Bogdanovic, huge signing. So not only did they get Conley, but they got Bogdanovic too. So they really got nice, I think 1 to 5, right? All their starters, I would say, are above average at the very least in their position. So they got really good starters. Now, their bench, like I said, O'Neal's good. Jeff Green is Ed Davis is Moutier is Exum, if he's healthy, is a good backup. But their depth is not that good. Moutier is, he put some numbers last year, but that was on the Knicks. He just isn't good enough to be a starter now. As a backup, I guess you can argue he's decent. So the Jazz are going to be a contender next year just because their starters are so good. So far we got the Warriors, we got the Nuggets, we got the Rockets and Jazz. So far we have 4 contenders. Now the Thunder, they lost their top 2 players. Actually, their top 3, they lost Jeremy Grant too. Steven Adams had a down year last year, so they're basically tanking next year. I mean, I'm not going to talk about them, but they lost all their top players, and they're going to tank. So they're not a contender. They weren't a contender last year either. They were a first-round exit, like usual. The Spurs will probably make the playoffs because you can't count out a team coached by their coach. So they'll make the playoffs, but they got Murray back. So they're a decent team, right? They got DeRozan, Derek White's not bad. Aldridge can still play pretty well. Bellinelli's a good role player. Like Carroll's Like they got a squad, but they're not a contender. Right? Popovich is not going to coach that team to a contender because their talent is not that good. Now the Clippers are going to be super interesting next year. I really think they're going to win the finals, and I'll tell you why. Not only are they contender, they're my favorite. And a lot of people think the same, but let's just break it down, right? They got Beverly back, who's a pest on defense, absolute pest. Paul George also locked down on defense. Kawhi Leonard also locked down on defense. So there you go. They got 3 lockdown defenders. Okay. Harrell can't really play defense that well, and neither can Zubac. But offensively, George, Leonard, and Harrell can score, especially Leonard and George. Right, they're stars. So George and Leonard are probably the best two-way players in the NBA, or arguably, top 5 at the very least. I think Leonard's number 1. George is definitely top 5, if you want to argue. Harrell is just a beast on offense on the boards. Lou Williams is an amazing scorer. Shamet can shoot. Huge shooter. I think he's crucial, man. If you can take that next step. Because last year he scored 9 points per game, but he shot over 40%, I believe, from 3. He shot 42% as a rookie, man. That's really good. I think he's a really good shooter off the bench and spot starter. So and then you got Harkless, who's a really good role player. JaMychal Green is all right. You got depth and you got star power. That's why I think the Clippers are going to win the finals next year. And Zubac, that's really the weak spot, center. Zubac, I don't know if he's playable in the playoffs against elite teams. So if you're going to beat the Clippers in the playoffs, you got to take advantage of their weak center. So that's really where, because Leonard and George are going to eat you alive. And Harrell's going to knock, he's going to dominate the inside game in terms of scoring the boards. Lou Williams is going to take over and dominate your bench. Shaman's going to come off screens and hit those threes. And Harkless is going to play hard. Like, you got talent. And Beverly is going to be pest on whoever is your point guard. I think a matchup the Clippers do not want is the Sixers, because Beverly is not really going to shut down Simmons. Paul George might get locked down by Josh Richardson. Leonard is going to go off. You can't stop that. But Embiid's going to cook Zubac, man. So I think the Clippers will beat the Sixers if they play against them, but it will be like a 6 or 7 game series. So that's the one team I think that can beat the Clippers from the East. Let's go back. So far, we got the Warriors, we got the Nuggets, we got the Rockets, we got the Jazz, we got the Clippers. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 contenders. And we're not even done yet, man. It's gonna be a bloodbath next year. So the Kings, they're a dark horse to make the playoffs, but not a contender. Like, they got pieces, man. I really, really like Fox at point guard. I think one thing that's going to be underrated is they lost their coach, who I think was a really good coach, and they replaced him with Luke Walton, who I don't think is a good coach. But if you look at Fox, man, he played really well. He had questions about his shot coming into the league, but he shot 37% from 3 on decent volume. He can play, man. He's a really good all-around point guard. He can also pass. So let's go back to our depth. Then you got Buddy Hield, who can shoot. He had a really good season last year, 20-5. But he also shot really well. He shot 45% from the field, 42% from 3. He's going to be a nice player this year. And then you got Bogdanovic. You still have him, right? He's really good as a role player. He could shoot. He shot 36% from 3, but he could do better. I think he had a iffy season from 3, but every time I see him play, he just knocks down shots. I think he passed the eye test pretty well. You got Harrison Barnes, who they traded for last year and re-signed. I just don't know if he's worth the money, but they have to pay him that much because they're a small market team. But he's not a bad player, man. 39% from 3, like, on decent volume. Let's see how many threes he shot. Yeah, he shot 4.6. That's pretty good volume, man. So I think he is, and also 6.3 on Dallas. He's not a bad player. He's a good, at least he's above average. You got Bagley, who's coming in as a sophomore next year. He had a really good rookie season. I think he's a nice player. And then you got Dedmon, who's a really good underrated role player. So you got the pieces, and you got Ariza you got Ariza and Bogdanovic, and Belasia, who's actually pretty good, and Rashawn Holmes, who's iffy on defense but gives you energy off the bench. So you got the pieces there to make the playoffs. Like, I think the Kings are really deep, really deep, but just they don't have the star power to contend. That's really the issue. But they'll probably make the playoffs. I think they're a dark horse at least. Then you got the Lakers. The Lakers last year were a mess, with the trade rumors, LeBron being injured. But, this year, they're just absolutely stacked. At least top-heavy. They got LeBron and AD. Already got 2 top 5 players. You got Kyle Kuzma, who's a good role player at the very least. Probably one of the better role players in the league, honestly. Danny Green, again, one of the better role players in the league. Rondo, I think he still got it. You got DeMarcus Cousins, who played pretty well after All-Star break last year. He had, I think, averaged over 21 and 10. So he can still bring it. Maybe not on defense, but he can bring it. You got KCP, who's a good shooter. Avery Bradley, a couple down years. He might bounce back. So Quinn Cook, who can shoot. Caruso, who's a meme. Dudley, not a fan of Dudley. But he's a decent role player. McGee, who, before he had health issues, was balling out last year as a role player. So you got the pieces there to at least contend. I think if I had to rank the contenders so far, I would say the number 1 contender is the Clippers. Number 2 is the Warriors. Number 3 is the Lakers. Most people have Clippers and Lakers, but I still think the Warriors just have more depth and they're more proven than the Lakers are. I mean, the Lakers, AD really hasn't done much in the playoffs. I mean, LeBron is as proven as you can get, but the pieces around LeBron, I mean, I think he's going to ball next year, but I just think the Warriors have more depth and just have more star power across teams, while the Lakers are relying really on just AD and LeBron to carry everybody, and they have role players around them, while the Warriors have Draymond, and they have Steph, and they have Clay, so they have just more spread out star power. So I'm going to give the Warriors a slight edge. So again, I'm going to go number 1, Clippers, number 2, Warriors, number 3, Lakers, and then let's continue with the Rockets as number 4, and the Jazz number 5, and then Nuggets number 6. So that would be my ranking of the contenders in the West, and then finally we have the Timberwolves. I just don't see them even making the playoffs. The Grizzlies, who are going to tank. The Pelicans, who are basically the Lakers when they were bad. So people think they might make the playoffs plus Zion, right? They have Zion plus the Lakers when they were bad. But I think they'll maybe win 40 games, but they're not going to make the playoffs. The Mavericks, who got Porzingis and they got Luka, but again, just not ready yet to make the playoffs. And then the Suns, who are going to tank. So that's why that's basically the contenders I have, those 6, and then everybody else will fight for the last 2 spots. Well, I think we'll go to the Spurs and the Blazers and the Kings as a dark horse. And then back to the East. So I think the Bucks, the Raptors, Sixers, Celtics, Pacers, and Nets will all make the playoffs. So the top 6 again will be flipped. Obviously, the Raptors will be number 2, but these 6 will make the playoffs. The Magic will contend for the playoffs. The Pistons will contend for the playoffs, and the Heat will contend for the playoffs. And finally, that's basically it. The Wizards, maybe. The Hawks, I'll be shocked. They might need one more year. And the Bulls. I forgot to talk about the Bulls. The Bulls are still I think they're just missing that star piece. I mean, Markkanen, he's a nice piece, but he's not a star. He might be an all-star next year. We'll see. He can really shoot, and he actually has some nice moves around the basket, but he's not ready yet to be a star. At least he might be an all-star. We'll see. Levine, he's underrated. He just doesn't play defense, so it's a problem, man. He can shoot. He can score. He's a really good scorer, but he needs to play defense for him to contend. But they got the pieces to at least possibly make the playoffs. We'll see. I just don't see him as a contender, not even close though. That's the problem. And that wraps up who I think will be the contenders next year in the 2019 and 2020 regular season. Thank you very much and hope you enjoyed this video.